Thank you so much for staying tuned to Africa Discourse. I am Wilson Omasha. Well, some of you have been complaining that you don't see the clips on our YouTube channel. I just want to tell that maybe you're punching the buttons wrongly, okay? All you need to log on to www.youtube.com/ITV Radio Benin. Yeah, and you go through the videos, you're going to see all our current affairs program, news and current affairs programs, Africa Discourse International Forum, 60 Minutes Nigeria, Flip Side, Business This Week, you just name it, it's always there, okay? So type it correctly, you get to see everything there. Well, today on Africa Discourse is all about COVID-19, but this time around, Africa seems to be divided between two countries. We want to talk about medical personnel, talking about doctors. Yes, South Africa of recent choose to call in the Cuban doctors to come help in the fight against COVID-19. And Nigeria, on our part, we choose to go to the Chinese. And people like asking, why is it that South Africa choose to go to Cuba? Over 200 doctors, 200 health workers from Cuba, from South Africa to help them fight this virus. And this is sparking so much questions. What are the political implications? What are the economic implications? Is it all about racism? Don't forget what happened to some blacks in China, whatever prevented from entering a shopping mall. Is this like a message sent to China that not all African countries are to their newsstand? Though they're saying that they're going to work on it, they will fight against it. What is really going on? It's all about the war against COVID-19. Don't forget that in the world, over 2 million people have contracted this virus. Yeah, over 200,000 have died. And of course, more than 800,000 they've recovered. U.S. is almost clocking 1 million now for the number of infected cases or infections. So many people have been talking so many things about this. And now let's wind down to our own continent, Africa. It's like choosing between two great nations, the one I would prefer to really work with in combating COVID-19. With me here in the studio is a clergyman, a political analyst, a human rights activist. Join me to welcome Reverend Humphrey Abrega. Reverend, welcome to Africa Discourse.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate your comment.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Since you say we can't shake hands.
It's about the rules and regulation governing the fight of COVID-19.
Well, rules are made from man, and sometimes the rules may not have what it takes, just a panic measure. But we, in an attempt to be a part of those who would like things to go the way it should go to get justice, we just obliged. Right. And we hope that we again come back to our cultural understanding of how to felicitate one with another.
All right. Now let's come to the discussion that is on the ground right now. South Africa calling for over 200 doctors from Cuba. People are like thinking they should have gone to China since they're like way ahead in the fight against COVID-19. After all, it originated from China. What do you think is the thought behind this in South Africa?
Well, it's not far-fetched from history. You remember that during the apartheid regime, Cuba was one of the allies of the ANC in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. And Cuba has a history of one of the best medical practice when it comes to community health medical practice and disease prevention. It's one of the best in the world. And over the years, it's part of their diplomatic moves to also get financial help for their country. So they send, especially to Latin America and even to some Western nations, they send their doctors to these places, and they've done fantastically well. So South Africa going to Cuba, it's no surprise to me. It's a friendly issue. And two, we also have the understanding that while Cuba does its own to get some financial resources to help because of the isolationist environment, the Chinese story is a very different one. First of all, though the virus, we're told, originated, with very many theories now.
Yeah, so many conspiracy theories.
As the origin of coronavirus. But at least the pandemic came from the Chinese environment. And we've not been told openly of what the Chinese have done to mitigate these issues. Chinese are very secretive in their medical issues and understandings. And two, we look at the economic implication because, like I said, the Cubans do not want to colonize your country. They need your resources to do whatever they want to do, and they get out. But the Chinese is on the colonization approach. And that's why some African countries are becoming very weary of the help that they think that the Chinese give. So I was just reading something about Tanzania, that the past president signed a contract, and the contract states 33 years of management and 99 years of lease. You are telling the country that you build a port and they will manage it for 99 years. That is for life.
For 99 years?
Yes, that's for life.
Almost a century.
Almost a century. And so we are looking at the colonization of Africa by Chinese people. And two, the treatments that the Chinese people have meted out to the Africans, not even because of these coronavirus issues. There are certain reports over the years of how Africans are maltreated in the Chinese land. And it's because of every country that the Chinese people have talked of offering help, it is a bondage, it's not help. So we really do not understand. So the Africans, some of them who have options, are saying no. And the South African is one of them. You know, in South Africa, you really don't have enough of the presence of the Chinese people. They deal with the Americans or deal with the Cuban people when it comes to health. So it's been a tradition with them. And they have consistently, if you look at the coronavirus issue in Cuba, it's almost not in existence now because they have been able to mitigate it, they have been able to contain it because they have the facilities, they have the capacity, they have the training. And is that what you need? So when you don't understand the people, it's difficult. Like now the Nigerians talking about Chinese people come, we don't understand who they are. There is a lot of divergent thoughts about it. We cannot communicate. Most of the time, what they say to you may not be what it means because you don't understand your language. There's a language barrier. So you are comfortable with who you are comfortable with. I'm sure that's why the South Africans went for Cuba.
So now for what you're saying right now is all about past relationship and allies. Okay, now let's come a little bit more down. Now, apart from the number of infected persons in Cuba that will be able to deal with it, 1,300 and something and counting, we've not gotten any recent case according to Worldometer in the coronavirus chart. Now, if you take a look at China, also they've been able to really nip this in the bud. Now, if you assess these two, don't you think that somewhere along the line, the Chinese may know what the Cuban doctors may not have knowledge of?
No, but we're looking at reports and statistics. What is the rate at which the Cubans are affected by the coronavirus? It's very minimal. And what is the rate of recovery and the rate of death? It's the death rate. I think they already have about 3 or so deaths for the 1,000 that they have. That is an excellent job. They didn't get help from anywhere. It's like also the Israelis. There are countries. Let's not go too far. Read up what Senegal is doing. Yeah. Senegal is a country that is in West Africa here. They produce their masks, they produce their installations, they produce their testing kits, and they have success rates. So if you are able to contain, it's not really the size of the country that we're talking about, it's not really the kind of hype that we talk about. We have also not seen, that's what I was saying, that we have not seen what the Chinese people have done. Yeah, they may have contained, but they're talking of a resurgence now in China. You know, we're talking of, and now they are blaming it on people who are coming from outside, who are coming back home. We have to ask ourselves the question, if you have all it takes to mitigate it, you're able to have done a lot to wipe it out as it is. But we are saying if you go to Senegal, Senegal for instance, the mitigation rate has been greatly successful. So I'm even asking questions. Why can't we patronize ourselves? What stopped Nigeria, for instance, going to Senegal and looking at their history of what they are doing and getting help from them? See, we are so fixated with our colonial masters. And one of the reasons is because we have a lot of things, debts on our hands with them, that we have no option than to be tied with them, because they will squeeze you if you don't pay your debts. So and we also seen a lot. I was reading something that they have about 900 million so returned fixed masks by Chinese, by Russia. Chinese people. No, not Chinese. We're talking about the nation.
People from Denmark also, they say that they return masks from China.
From China. So these are some of the things. So we have more of disturbing history and reports from Chinese involvement than from outside. So why will I now put myself in the harm's way of situations when I know that whatever I'm getting is not what I needed? You see? But if you go to Cuba, we have not heard of where Cuba have gone to, and there is a mishap. It's not. They've effectively contained and helped. They went to Italy. They were those who helped Italy to overcome when they were in the pandemic.
But China also went to Italy.
Yeah, but I'm saying, the Cuban people went there first. They did. You see, they will always be this. China is actually Italy is bigger than Cuba and all of them. But see, they also have. Italy has also have a bonding with China because there is this trade relations that they have had with China. So they also have that affinity with them. So you cannot now just say no. You see, that's what I'm saying. Nobody gives you free lunch. There's always a tag to it.
There is always a tag to it. Oh, now, do you now mean to say that it's all about trusts? That South Africa in a way trusts Cuba more than they trust China because of the examples you just gave?
That's the underlying effect. They trust Cuba more. Anything, even doctors will tell you, if you don't trust a doctor to treat you, you will not be well. You need the trust of the doctor to be able to do that. So if you don't trust any person, you can't be relating with the person with a free mind. So when you have suspicion, there's bound to be mistakes and mishap. These are some of the. So I believe that the bottom line for South Africa is that we trusted Cuba more than Chinese. So let's go to the ones we trust. Because, like I said, what do they want to do? They want to send the Cubans to the communities. And that is where the Cubans are very effective, community health delivery. And that's the thing. Because in Africa, the pandemic will rise based on the environmental factors. You know, more of Africans lives in the rural environments, on hygienic environments than most other people. You know, so if you have somebody who have an experience, and Cuba with its socialist environment or situation deals more with people in the suburbs and those kind of social down people, and so they have understanding. The Chinese may have a population with some of those things, but all we are hearing about the Chinese people is the affluent and environment. Until the coronavirus, we never heard of Wuhan.
All right. Now, some pundits are of the opinion that the reason why South Africa chose to go this way is to show their undying or unflinching loyalty to the U.S. Are they related in any way? Because you also be complaining also about Chinese, how will I put it now, involvement in coronavirus and the rest of them. Are they dancing to the tune of the U.S. right now by inviting Cuba rather than inviting Chinese personnel to come and help them out?
Not at all, because the Americans are not even happy with the Cubans. They are not in talking terms. There is a problem now. The Cubans developed a drug, and the American president had banned the use of it. But some Americans, it was tested in New York because of the kind of federal system they have. The states have powers. Drugs have been tested and they found effective, and so some Americans are now going to Cuba. So South Africa is not dancing to the Americans because Americans don't want to hear about Cuba at all. Like I said, there's an underlying relationship they have. Don't forget, as much as possible, South Africa is a sovereign nation. But like I said, they have a history of relationship between the Cuban government and the ANC. And the ANC are in power. So they are not closed that chapter of relationship to see how, and once they have, it is also cheaper for you it's also cheaper for South Africans to get Cuban involved than to get Chinese people involved.
In what terms?
Monetary terms. It is cheaper for the Chinese people, the South Africans, to pay the Cuban doctors, because you don't pay the doctors, you pay the government. The government pay their citizens. You know, the Chinese people, I don't know, I don't really know much of their issues, but I know that you also may have to pay the Chinese government, but then there's also the rates, the economic rates also very divergent. Like I said, Cuba is not fighting for economic overload over nations. No, they're not fighting for your good or anything. They're just using their medical skill to attract resources to themselves. Right. China is fighting for the soul of African resources. And that also is very embarrassing to African nations, for you to become enslaved to another nation because of what resources you may think you want to give.
Okay, if you just join us, this is Africa Discourse. We are taking a look at the influx, well, I say, of over 200 doctors from Cuba into South Africa to help them combat coronavirus. And this video is courtesy SABC. Yes, they're just jubilating, you know, kind of raising the picture of Fidel Castro, telling him welcome and all that. Now, does it not mean that other nations in Africa calling China to come help them out? Are they making a huge mistakes? Are they making a huge mistake because of the analogy you've just given? Talk about financial implication, talk about, how will I put it now, submitting your sovereignty to the Chinese nationals. Is it a huge mistake?
Well, to some point you may say yes, but to some, because you may not understand the entirety of the reasons why people make the decisions to make. But we are saying, looking at the issues and the historical perspective. Look at one of the countries I use an example. I think in Zambia, for instance, that is being said now in quote is just an annex of the Chinese country because of the investment the Chinese brought. So we are looking at that, and I'm saying, you have not heard of a country that Cubans came to, and there is a fight over territorial integrity. It's not there. Two, we're also talking of efficacy and the result of issues. There is none, and I keep saying, I've tried to read history of all those things. I've not seen where Cuban doctors have been accused of lack of knowledge of what they're doing. No, they have brought their skills, because there is a medical training in Cuba that gives you the knowledge that you need to practice what you're practicing. But in some of the issues with Chinese, whether of goods or services, we have seen that there is a lot of what we might call not too good a show.
Inferior goods and services.
Inferiority. We have also know that, I said, looking at the history of thought, how much of Chinese do we really know? Because language is important, very important. How many Nigerians can speak Chinese language and interpret it correctly? And that's why when you're talking of the memorandum of understanding they are having, we're having problems with it. Because you later now discover what they told you is not what is there. So you have to ask yourself the question, how, you have been saying goods, we have been talking over the period before this coronavirus came in. Goods, whether it is medical or issues, and we're talking of coming from China, they've been adulterated, they've been found to be not to be as efficacious as we're supposed to be. So we have this mistrust is already there. That's why a lot of people are talking about, why do we keep bringing them when we have not seen what the results ought to be to our benefit? That's the point. Okay, when you also go to the Cuban medical relations, for instance, when they go to a country, they integrate with the country, and they integrate with the social environment. Try to understand. The Chinese people don't integrate. You have seen Chinese companies over the period, and you find that it's difficult. They live in a community of their own, and nobody understands what they're doing. So you need to be able to, I need to be able to understand you, to have the courage and the stability of mind to stay with you, especially when you're talking of life. You know, if I cannot trust you, how will I trust the product you are bringing? These are some of the things. So I believe, to me, that's why the South Africans went for Cuba, because over the years, they've seen their relationship and they benefited from it. We've seen some situations that are happening between Chinese and Africans, and the issue is not too good for us. So that's some of it. So I would have, like I also said, we must also trust ourselves. Why can't we look at Senegal, who have, over the years, they've been talking of developing their medical issues, and they have success rates. Why is it difficult? Why is it difficult for us? This is where the Africans should think back and think, why is it difficult for us to develop ourselves? Cuba has to develop themselves through the very hostile environment with Western countries. These are some of the things. They need to know that if they don't develop themselves, if they don't have the capacity, they may not have the resources. We also should be able to develop our resources so that we can also export and get resources to develop ourselves. And that's what the Chinese people are trying to do. But most of the time also, Chinese people may not give you the best. Nobody give, from the Western countries to Chinese and all of them, none of them give you their best. They don't. They give you partially what they think they don't need. But we accept it as if it's the best that we can get because we have refused to develop ourselves. You know, I believe that Nigeria, where we'll be talking of coronavirus, where are the universities? Where are the research institutes? What are they doing? What is government doing? Does government listen to these research institutes that are supposed to be the ones to look at issues and give results? Are they funded well to be able to develop research? All we're talking about now, Chinese are developed, it's research. All we're talking about Cuba is research. These are some of the things. So we need to ask ourselves these basic questions. Whether you are importing Cubans or Chinese, to me, it's a letdown on African nations. That each time we have a problem, we look outside.
Each time we have a problem, we look outside. People have been talking about this, saying this is like a slap on the face of Africa. But they gave an example of Senegal doing their own thing, doing their own research, trying to really combat this virus, and they're not doing badly when it comes to the fight against COVID-19. Well, you know, this is an abridged version, 30 minutes. It's an abridged version. But before you advise African nation, do you think that this is related to the video that went viral where blacks are prevented from entering into some Chinese mall or anything that has something to do with China in the motherland?
I said earlier, it's not the first time it's happened.
Yeah.
We've had these problems over the years.
But this video went viral.
Yeah, it went viral because we are talking of now what is happening, COVID-19. But at every point in time where there is a crisis, the victims of this institution are always Africans in other foreign countries. That's why I say you should develop yourself. Africans have enough to develop themselves and they are self-sufficient. You don't need to go to somewhere else. You know, it is because the man thinks, what are they saying now? Africans are the one bringing back coronavirus to China. Where did they bring it from? It originated from you. You know, does coronavirus know color? COVID-19 doesn't know color. It attacks whoever comes to the environment. So why is it the Africans? Not all of you see, and I want to thank the Nigerian Consul General in that environment that stood against the place. You see, there are things we need to, once you allow people to slap you once, they slap you again. I say, because of debt that Africans owe, they find it difficult to stand up. That was the Tanzanian president had just stood up against the Tanzania and cancelled the agreement that was made. No, you can't. You see, you need to stand up. When people know you have the courage to do what you need to do. And that's what, if our consul in that place didn't stand up, you would have seen a lot of Africans dehumanized more than what it is. That's what it is. But because the man stood up, somebody knows what his rights. Nobody knows what should happen. So, and the government of Nigeria has not spoken. We didn't hear president speak. And you can't treat an American person like that outside and see what happens to you. Or you treat a Chinese person outside in Nigeria now like that and see what the Chinese government will do. So we need to, it's a wake-up call to us. Value your citizens wherever they are. Okay. If they If there's a wrong they have done, let the justice take his course, like the man said. If the man has committed an offense, charge him for it. But you cannot just see him because he's black and imputing to him what is, and even have the audacity to seize his passport, which is against international law, which are some of the things. You know, so it's because of this. So, and that's why they give us anything we just throw away.
All right.
So let us, if you don't have, you take whatever is given to you.
Okay.
You can't even produce ordinary mask.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much, Reverend. I appreciate a wonderful analysis and abridged version. You've heard him. Develop yourself, because the race for Chinese and of course Cuban doctors coming to Africa to fight coronavirus, we can do it if only we have stable research institution, good health facilities. But we're still fighting. We are still fighting. In Africa right now, the coronavirus skyrocketed to up to 20,000 or thereabout put together an African continent. But eventually, we are going to win this war. Reverend, thanks once more for coming on today's show. I appreciate your coming. Well, tomorrow is International Forum. Like I said before, is the proposed easing of the lockdown in the U.S. Part 2 of it. You don't want to miss any part of it. Bye for now.